Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuki. Coming up.
Given that it's raining, those are some of the explanations that have been given that could have caused this landslide here.
PNG survivors have been warned to stop digging. Also,
from what I've heard from different people I've spoken to, this is it's like the Olympics of culture.
Hawaii ramps up its aloha spirits for the 13th Pacific Festival of Arts. And what does it mean for Pacific nations to be fully independent? Survivors of the Papua New Guinea landslide in Inga province have been told to stop digging for bodies due to health and safety concerns. A preliminary report by the Department of Mineral Policy and Geohazard Management regarding the landslide disaster in Yambali village has been released, outlining a number of recommendations. The area has officially been deemed a no-go zone, with a very high likelihood of further landslides in the near future. Alicia Foon spoke with World Vision Program Operations Director for PNG, Godfrey Bongoman, about the developments.
The number of displaced people is 1,650. So the 7,849 are the affected. The majority of the affected population are basically living with, friends in the neighboring communities, because it's quite cold out there. And if you have no home, you have no house, you can't just be in the bare cold. And then they come to the disaster site during the day to be able to continue with mourning. Plus also they're still trying their best to retrieve the bodies of their loved ones. Of course, this is something that the authorities have already been able to speak to them, that it's now not it's not safe still to try and retrieve bodies.
But still, a significant amount of people who may be deemed missing persons by Friday.
The latest report that has come out through the National Disaster Center, plus also, the disaster management team, officially is 670 at the moment, yes.
There was a lot of delays to heavy machinery. Is there any progress on body retrievals for locals and people that are desperate to have a proper burial for their loved ones?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. There was a delay in terms of deployment of the heavy equipment. One explanation is that these were being mobilized from Lae, and Lae is quite a distance away from the disaster site, right? This had to take days. But also, too, a main bridge that is linking to the disaster area also had collapsed. So there was, diversion in terms of focus, first of all, to fix the bridge and then allow the equipment to go to the site. Now, when the equipment got in there, certainly the community also had concerns regarding the fact that bodies of their loved ones would be, dismembered or disfigured through retrieval using equipment, So those really have been some of the setbacks in terms of using the heavy equipment to retrieve bodies. So certainly they were able to, I'm told there are 3 military equipment that are on site. They tried to do some work, but I think after the advice that has been given by the provincial health authority and also the leadership of the province, that the bodies may not be in a good state for any decent burials to be conducted, I think that has been halted, yeah.
So for the water source that's been contaminated and covered, what is the solution long term?
Yeah, it's quite a difficult one to resolve. But of course, for the long term, there are options of the solution would be to sink some boreholes and be able to motorize. The motorization, of course, would entail having electric pump or solar pump installed so that water is taken out of the ground and probably sent to reservoir tanks that can definitely be distributed into the settlement, the gazetted area for settlement. So that's really what would be, the long-term solution.
And what came about with the geohazard assessments? Was the report released?
Yeah, there is a report that has been shared. Yeah, some of the key findings, of course, are that the ground is still unstable there, right? So there's still movement happening around. And of course, people have also been told not to stay long around the area where the actual disaster happened. There's still quite some movement, it's evident. Even the road leading to the disaster area, there are times you find debris, fallen rocks, and things like that the military has to clear. But of course, in terms of the explanation given as to what really happened, they're linking it more to the effect of the rainfall, probably causing erosions and with the weathering and of rocks and things like that. Given that it's raining, those are some of the explanations that have been given that could have caused this landslide here.
This week, the world's largest festival of Pacific arts and culture, better known as FestPac, will be kicking off in Hawaii. Launched in the early 70s, the primary focus of the festival was to halt the erosion of Pacific traditional practices through ongoing exchange. I caught up with a reporter, Tiana Haxton, who's currently in Honolulu.
Aloha sana and kia ora everyone. It's the Festival of Pacific Arts, or FestPac is what it's been abbreviated to. Began way back in 1972, and like the Olympics, it's held every 4 years, but this is the first time it's being held since COVID, so it's actually been a bit longer since the last one. So this is the 13th edition of the festival, and it kicks off on the 6th, and it runs for 10 days here in the beautiful Hawaii, and there are hundreds, if not thousands of people that are going to be here, and it's going to be an absolutely incredible showcase of Indigenous cultural heritage from all across the Pacific.
So because this is the first time this festival's been held since COVID, I can imagine a lot of excitement and anticipation has gone into preparations. What are the locals saying about the event?
Yeah, so I've managed to catch up with a few different delegations in the past couple of days since I've landed at the centre, and everyone is just so hyped up and so excited. I've talked to people from countries where they've been preparing for over a year for this. They've been planning out their performances, what arts and crafts showcases they'll be bringing down and whatnot, and it just makes one even more excited to attend the festival and see all of the hard work that everyone's put into preparing for the show.
So in terms of delegation, who can we expect to see at the festival?
We're going to have pretty much everybody from all across Micronesia, Melanesia and Polynesia. There are a few countries that aren't able to attend, of course, like New Caledonia at the moment. They're unable to come, but yes, we have like Federated States of Micronesia, Samoa, the Cook Islands, groups from as far as the Norfolk Islands. You've got Aotearoa Māori groups, Australian Indigenous groups. Everybody's going to be here.
You spoke about the excitement and all the efforts that have gone into make this event a reality. Why is this such a significant event for the Pacific region?
From what I've heard from different people I've spoken to, this is it's like the Olympics of culture. Everyone comes and gets to put on an incredible showcase of their Indigenous practices. So it's not just about the dancing, though that is a big part of it, seeing all the different traditional dances from the different countries, but it's also where they'll have like tatau practice, the traditional tattooing different crafts. Like some countries have very unique weaving practices, weave with certain materials, or some are more fine woven products than others. It's where all of these practices get to be brought and shared with their sister nations and revitalized and just kept alive, really. It's where all the countries can come and show how proud they are of their rich Pacifica heritage and talents.
I really love how you highlighted that this festival really is a platform for Pacific people to demonstrate their pride and their practices. But in terms of festival goers, can we expect a crowd of thousands?
From what I've heard, there will definitely be thousands here. So most of the delegations themselves are 100 people, if not more. So that's a good 1,000 or so people just from the delegations from all across the Pacific. Even in the hotel where I'm staying at, I've met heaps of people in the lobby who are either tourists that are here at the same time and looking forward to going to the festival, or who have traveled here specifically to attend the festival and just go and check it out for themselves. So there's going to be so many people here, and like the flights to come here have been booked out for months. So everyone's here.
Nice. And do you think the venue will be able to accommodate thousands of festival goers that are expected to attend?
Yeah, well, I've been to the space over the past couple of days, and I've been impressed with how huge it is. There's so many floors and massive rooms where everything's going to be held, and you know how it goes. Everyone's going to be flowing in and out over the days and checking things out. Some of the performing groups will also be performing at other places all around Waikiki. I know there's some groups that are going to be performing down near the beach or at malls nearby. So it won't just be at the centre, but there'll also be events going out into the public as well. So everyone will be able to enjoy it wherever they are.
A Pacific security group has raised concerns over public consultation on a decade-long proposal to test missile defences at Guam. The US Missile Defense Agency has given the people of Guam 30 days for submissions on plans for missile testing, which could happen twice a year for the next 10 years. The Missile Defense Flight Test or target tracking exercises would be conducted from Anderson Air Force Base or at sea from a US Navy ship in the Western Pacific Ocean. Alicia Foon spoke with Pacific Centre Island Security spokesperson Leland Bettis about the proposal.
I think the first thing is to understand that there's a larger plan called the Enhanced Integrated Air and Missile Defense System, which the Department of Defense has proposed. And this would involve up to 20 sites around Guam for missile defense sites, for command and control sites. And it would involve a high number of personnel coming in from the U.S. government. We don't know how many people yet that would be, but we've heard, could be over 1,000 military personnel. So this particular piece is really just a small piece of the overall Enhanced Integrated Air and Missile Defense System. It is a test of the anti-missile system and a tracking of missiles, either interceptors or missiles that are launched at Guam. And in this particular environmental assessment, final environmental assessment, it really is a precursor for everything else, but it's been carved out from the larger environmental impact statement. And this in itself raises concerns because the test of these missiles and whether or not this system will work is foundational to everything else that will follow. And the Department of Defense and MDA have tried to say there's no significant impact from these tests, but it's obviously ignoring the larger impact that the entire system will have on the island.
And what danger or risk does this pose to people, to their homes, I guess the overall population in Guam? Because I think a lot of people can forget that there's over 100,000 people living on Guam. It's not just a military base for the US.
Right. For those of us who are civilians that are here, we're regularly confronted with the notion that Guam only has military bases. In fact, there's 170,000 people in Guam. Most of them are not in the military. We have about 500,000 visitors from Asian region that come on holiday here. What this particular flight test involves is not yet clear. We've been told that some property owners near where the test would take place could be affected, but we have not seen a list of what those properties are or who could be affected by debris from some of the missile launch vehicles. So, again, this is a final proposed rule, not a draft. There was no draft. And clearly there's just not a lot of information even in this final piece about what the true impacts would be.
Will this still go ahead if there's enough outcry or concern by the people of Guam?
This is a regulatory process in the way the U.S. government sees these things. So, we will see what the public comments are, but in terms of the process itself, this is pretty much a closed deal, the way the military would see this. Again, this is not a draft. This is a final proposed environmental assessment and then a finding that there's no significant impact from this particular aspect of the missile defense system, which is just the test. But again, we don't have a lot of data around some of the things that they indicate may be problematic, so it's really hard to tell even where the finding of no significant impact is coming from. It's just a small piece of the overall enhanced integrated air and missile defense system, which the U.S. government has planned for Guam. And this is being put in place clearly because Guam is a large target, I think, in the event of a conflict in the region, and so therefore they have this larger plan to put in this battery of ground-based missile defense batteries on the island. The test piece itself is just to sort of prove that this overall system would work. This is a very complicated system. It's never been done before. Guam is essentially the test bed for a larger air and missile defense system that the United States is trying to develop. And so what we're seeing with this first environmental assessment is really just the beginning of a deluge or a tidal wave of coming military activities around the buildup of a missile defense system in Guam that may or may not be as effective as advertised. But again, from where we sit in the civilian community, this is really the beginning of what we see as a tidal wave of environmental statements and activities around this proposed build of a very massive integrated air and missile defense system that the U.S. military has planned for Guam.
The U.S. Missile Defense Agency has been approached for comment. This week marked Samoa's 62 years of independence. It's a proud history which former administrators New Zealand have recognised.
For the last time, the two trusteeship flags are lowered, one by the Prime Minister of New Zealand and the other by the Honourable Mataafa Fiame, Prime Minister of Western Samoa.
The push for independence is still alive in the Pacific, but it's getting messy, particularly in New Caledonia.
Over the last week, New Caledonia has descended into violence. The delicate political balance in this special status French territory crumbled with alarming speed.
So is independence even worth it? Kia ora, I'm Susana Suisuiki. I usually host RNZ's Pacific Waves, but today I'm on the detail looking at independence movements in the Pacific. Joining me is Nick McLellan, a correspondent for Islands Business magazine in Fiji and a long-time researcher in the Pacific. Nick has written extensively about the decolonisation in the Pacific, and I began by asking him how many Pacific territories are currently seeking independence.
There are still a number of countries listed with the UN Special Committee on Decolonisation as what the international law calls non-self-governing territories. In the Pacific, this includes American territories like Guam.
Guam has been under U.S. rule since 1899 and is home to two critical air and naval bases that provide access to the South China Sea and the Korean Peninsula. 28% of the island is occupied by the U.S. military.
And American Samoa, French territories, New Caledonia, relisted in 1986, and French Polynesia, Maui Nui, in 2013.
The nation of 280,000 people, almost 16,000 kilometres from France, became a colony in 1880 and was the base for their nuclear tests in the Pacific.
For reasons of history, Wallis and Futuna is not formally listed as non-self-governing territory with the UN. Even Britain has tiny Pitcairn still listed, the last confetti of empire from the fading British Empire.
Pitcairn, Henderson, Ducie and Wano are officially British overseas territories, and they're quite famous. Not for their strategic location, nor for the resources. With a population of 47, how important could they be?
And of course, New Zealand is the administering power for Tokelau, which remains under the supervision of the UN.
Jacinda Ardern's promised to help Tokelau build the political structures it needs for independence.
I think it is timely to keep checking in with the people of Tokelau and ask them, is this the kind of relationship you want? Would you like that greater freedom that comes from not being a territory?
Beyond that, though, there are many struggles for self-determination and sovereignty, both in Pacific countries and in Pacific Rim countries like Australia, Aotearoa, New Zealand, United States, and so on. So there's a strong sovereignty movement in Hawaii, but obviously a minority in the population there. Hawaii, though, is not listed as a territory with the UN. It's a state of the United States. In Bougainville and in West Papua, you have what the central government sees as a province, but nationalist movements in both those places are seeking an independent and sovereign state.
Leaders of the autonomous region of Bougainville have met with PNG lawmakers in Port Moresby for talks to map a pathway towards independence. After years of stagnation, there does appear to have been a breakthrough that could re-energise a process that's moved very little since a referendum on the issue in 2019.
Once again, because Bougainville's part of the independent nation of Papua New Guinea, West Papua is made up in a number of provinces of the Republic of Indonesia. They're not seen by the UN in the same light as the old blue water colonies like New Caledonia.
Well, the tensions that we're seeing in New Caledonia, as well as other movements in the Pacific, why is the transition towards independence for those remaining Pacific territories becoming increasingly difficult?
One significant problem is that particularly France and the United States, policy is driven by their status as global powers, members of the UN Security Council with veto power at the UN, nuclear-armed states. Obviously, both the United States, France and Britain conducted nuclear tests in the Pacific over 50 years in the 20th century.
193 tests took place in French Polynesia over 3 decades, up until 1996. A new study claims France has concealed its true impact.
It's like a genocide. Silently, people are dying. Silently, our people is dying.
There is a cult of exceptionalism in these colonial powers. They claim to be upholders of human rights, of democracy, of the rules-based order, the current piece of jargon that's widely used. And you see many of them reluctant to accept the mandate of the UN General Assembly, the demand for decolonisation that is at the heart of the United Nations project in the 20th century, the move towards political, economic, social self-government in the colonies of the world.
And you can listen to the rest of the analysis on The Detail available on all podcast platforms, or head over to our website at rnz.co.nz/Pacific. That's Pacific Waves for today. To listen back, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā soifua.